Alright, peace to you, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Now, in today's video, one moment, let the plane pass. Okay, that's good enough. Yeah. So in today's video, I just want to reflect more on and expound more upon what I've been reading with Rene Guénon, and specifically in his book, The Reign of Quantity in the Signs of the Times, and specifically how he applies it to broader society and what has happened to the arts and the crafts and the sciences. And essentially his thesis is, Mr. Guénon, is that what we have today with the arts and the crafts and the sciences and industry in particular, these are all a pale, shadowy mimic, an imitation, a degenerated form of the true arts and crafts and sciences, of the ancient world. So I'll give you a few examples. Well, first we'll start by way of analysis. This is not mine, but Rene Guénon's. So, back in the day, things naturally, they had more quality because more time was put to them, more labor and more care. So you would have, let's say, the shoemaker. Shoemaking was his craft, and it was passed down from his father, given to his father from the father before, etc., etc. You know, you had the shoemaker, you had the clothing maker. You didn't have this mass production of clothes, but instead you had everything was made to measure, tailored to you. And what other things can we think of? We can think of the carpenter as well. Instead of mass-produced fixtures and mass-produced things that we use for construction, everything was more or less handmade, and the skill, the craft was passed down from ages, from the grandfather to the father to the kid. And what this essentially was it was more of an expression of the idea of quality. Okay, now we have the reign of quantity, whereby all these things are being. So let me put it this way. Nowadays, a job is seen as rather interchangeable, right? If you work in a suit store, you're quickly replaceable for another person. And the same thing with me. If another job gives me better pay than the job I have now, I'm going to quickly replace it for something else. Jobs are seen as an accessory, an add-on to a person's life, purely for the goal of attaining money. There's no deeper meaning to having a job or an occupation. Whereas in the past, it wasn't so interchangeable in that way. A man was taught shoemaking by his father, and he knew that craft, and he couldn't really go into anything else because that was what he was trained to do. And essentially how it was there's a quote in the book. It's not Rene Guénon's quote, but he's quoting another author, where essentially every occupation, it says that essentially every occupation was a priesthood. So it was more than just the acquisition of capital and money, so we could buy food and we can afford the overhead that we live in, etc. It wasn't really about that solely. It was also about the fulfilling of one's role. The shoemaker, he had his role within his society, and essentially he had to fulfill it. We consider the quality and the characteristics of the individual. So he was born to a shoemaker. His dad was a shoemaker. He needs to be a shoemaker as well. And if he is not going to follow, if he chooses to not follow the essential order for which he was created, the karma, the salat, the duty, the caste, the position that he was in society, if he didn't fulfill that, but instead he found another occupation which was not in line with his internal nature, again, we're thinking about quality, the quality of an individual, not a quantity, then this was seen as a great disruption to the natural cosmic order. So again, you can think of the video I made previously regarding how nowadays our minds have been taken off of heavenly things, of spiritual things. We've been made more materialistic, vain. We think more about earthly things as opposed to heavenly things. And this even applies to how we consider our jobs. It's not about fulfilling your vocation and your duty, finding the best expression of your natural talents and abilities, and also your natural position, where you were born into, what is practical for you. But instead, it's about purely the acquisition of money. What job gives me the most money? It's the reduction of quality into quantity. Again, not considering the nature and essence of a thing, the essence of an individual, but purely him as a numerical unit in a machine that is far larger than him. We have lost that concept nowadays with our work, in our industry, and our jobs. Everything is interchangeable. My company that I work for, they could throw me out at any moment, and I could throw them out as well if somebody else comes and offers me better pay and better conditions. It's not so much about fulfilling your role and your duty and quality. It's more about quantity. It's seen as everything is being reduced down to numerical units. It's the concept which I deal with in my book, The Flat Earth Manifesto, atomism. atomism applied to the social being, atomism applied to the social economy, where essentially you have one individual person, one unit, and we have one individual job, one unit, and we need to pair each individual job with each individual unit of a person, not at all considering their quality, but just throwing them in. It's all about capital and again, pragmatic quantity, not quality. That's what it comes down to. So what we have today with industry is, as Renee Guénon says, a pale and shadowy imitation, a degenerated form of the previous sciences. So the science of shoemaking. Now we have mainstream industry, where instead of me putting together the shoe hand in hand, sleeves rolled up, with my own twist, my own flair, my own human nature added to it, we have mass production, whereby I'm just standing for 8 hours a day in a factory doing one specific repetitive movement, and it's really not me making the shoe, but instead it is the machine itself making the shoe. People, this is another thing Guénon says, that people will say that, oh, the machine is a tool, the machine is a tool. No, the machine is not a tool. We are the tool of the machine. A tool is really an extension of the abilities of an individual, right? So if I have a sword in my hand, I'm controlling that sword. That sword is an extension of my ability to cause harm to people, my ability to cut and open up their skin. And that sword can be rightfully considered a tool because it's an extension of my abilities. But in the industrial society, let's say the mass production of shoes in these sweatshops in Pakistan, India, China, wherever else, we are the tool of the machine because it's not fundamentally us in control. We are not making that shoe or that mass-produced dress or t-shirt. It's the machine that's making it, and we are there as an accessory to the machine. Every single aspect of creative quality has been taken out of the quotient. Again, quality taken out, and now it's been reduced down to pure quantity. And that is the trajectory which he sees the world going in. He saw this back then, and I don't even know when he was writing. Somewhere maybe in the mid-1900s, something like that. He saw it back then, and we're just now further down that conveyor belt now. That conveyor belt of reducing everything from quality, from unity into multiplicity, pure quantity. You know, my wife, she was just at the thrift store a couple days ago, and she came across a book which talked about the art of cleaning, right? This is another thing that's been lost, the quality of cleaning. Now it's pure quantity. If you think of somebody who works as a cleaner in a hotel, in a restaurant, it's just about scrubbing down that table as quick as you can. It's just about scrubbing down those windows as quick as you can. The art, the quality of it has been taken out, because in the book, this is something new to me and new to her that she learned, is essentially, think about if you're cleaning a window. On one side, you want to clean it swiping up and down, and on the other side, you want to clean it swiping side to side. And the reason is because if you do everything just like this, you're going to miss certain streaks and certain spots of dirt. But if you do the up and down, side to side, if you take your time with it, you master and hone the craft, the quality of cleaning, then you get a better end result. But again, as I've been repeating over and over, it's the loss, the degeneration of all those previous arts that people in the past knew, of shoemaking, of clothing making, of cleaning, of service. All these things are being reduced down to the basest and smallest, most degenerate form. They're mimicking the ancient sciences, the ancient practices, the ancient way of life, even what we have with the actual so-called sciences. With all is concerned with is pragmatism. We just want to invent more cool stuff. We want to invent the next fastest car, the next most fuel-efficient machine, although we can also go into conspiracy theories about whether they really want fuel efficiency, whether they want cars to run on water, or they really want them to just run on gasoline. That goes into whole free energy conspiracy, but let's put that aside. But we want the fastest car, the most efficient car, the most quote-unquote safe car. And this is leading us into even the invention of self-driving cars. It's all about maximum efficiency. And this is considered science, pragmatic function. But again, this is a degeneration, a mimicking, a pale, shadowy reflection of the real ancient sciences, which constituted true understanding of the thing itself. Real function, real knowledge, real holistic comprehension. It wasn't just about pure pragmatic function. So this is a natural corollary to the reign of quantity that we live in. It's the degeneration of all the art forms and sciences and crafts. And we don't even realize certain things are crafts. Like even just reading this book, I'm thinking about doing my work with more quality. I'm a customer service guy, right? I work in a suit store, I sell suits. And I've already naturally been this way, but I've noticed that every company that I've worked for, they always will give you a certain script. They want you to talk in a certain way. They want you to say things in a certain way. And I never did that. I never wanted to be that robot. I want to genuinely help somebody with my real personality, help them find a suit. And it leaves a lasting impression on them. They always come back in, my customers who I help, they always come back into the store and they say, hey, we want to work with Walid. Oh, hey, where's Walid? They remember my name because I didn't help them like a customer service robot. I wasn't quantity. I wasn't this mass-produced drone, but I helped them like a real individual person, and they felt that, and they remembered my name, right? It just makes you think of applying more quality, more time, more care, more deliberation, and more spirit to whatever we do, to hone our craft and our position and station in life. Let's not be reduced down to the reign of quantity, but let's try to bring back a reign of quality. And we can even merge this with Jacques Ellul and what he's been talking about with technique. The whole idea of technique, what is it? For those who've either read his work, The Technological Society, or maybe watched Brother Sam's expounding upon his work, technique is the absolute efficiency in every area possible with no regard for quality, with no regard for innate nature. Just production, 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 with no seeming care for any other value, just to produce efficiency. And really, Jacques Ellul and René Guénon, they're both talking about the same thing, talking about the same quality, the same idea and philosophy in different names. Technique is the reign of quantity, and the reign of quantity is technique, right? Technique seeks maximum efficiency. It seeks to reduce things down to the most constituent and basic parts. It seeks to degenerate all the sciences, all the art forms into the lowest quality, that which can just produce more. Nothing to be said about the quality. And this is what René Guénon is talking about. All of us, whether it be Jacques Ellul, René Guénon, Brother Sam, me, we have a certain, and probably you who watch my channel, we have a certain mentality, a certain demeanor. We all think sort of similarly, and we intuit the society in kind of the same way. We're of a certain category. In some sense, the believing category, the category that's inclined to things of God, to things of a higher nature, to things of a higher order. And those who are atheistic, nihilistic, materialistic, they just see the world in a completely different way. And you can kind of, whether it's in my Flat Earth Manifesto, it's in things that Brother Sam talks about, it's in René Guénon's works, it's in Jacques Ellul's, you can kind of synthesize all of our concepts together. We're all sort of talking about the same things, just in slightly different wording, slightly different format. And specifically on the subject of art, art is now seen as a luxury. It's another thing that Guénon talks about. A luxury which only people with extra time and extra money, they indulge in on the side. Whereas art in the past, in the ancient sciences, the ancient crafts, shoemaking, clothing making, it was infused into the very craft itself. So the shoemaker, he added his own twist, his own spin to whatever he was putting together. The clothing maker, the dressmaker, she added whatever twist and spin, the human quality towards it, right? Art was just infused in the daily crafts, whereas everything we do nowadays, at least most of the jobs in the West, they're just pure quantity, pure efficiency. There's no room really for quote-unquote creative expression. There's nothing like that whatsoever. There's no creative expression in a sweatshop in India or in Africa. Right? Art has been, again, reduced of quality down to quantity, degeneration, an involution of the essence of things, the abnegation of the essence of things in favor of just more mass production. And to extend the ideas of Guénon even further, it would be only in such a time, in such a decadent era of the reign of quantity, where we would see things like AI art. And I don't know if you've ever looked into these AI art programs like Midjourney and what's the other one called? Lion something, I'm not sure what it is. But essentially it's a program which you can literally tell it to produce whatever you want. Whatever you want. You can say, I want you to produce a man with a medium-length beard, missing one eyebrow, and wearing a Yankee snapback sideways, and it'll produce that very thing for you. And you can say, I want it in an anime style, I want it in a hyper-realistic style, and it'll produce that for you within a matter of seconds. It's just the mass production of art, and many true artists, those who draw hand in hand, they're now very concerned about this. They think this is going to put us out of business. Nobody's going to want to buy our services anymore when they can just kind of speak these incantations to this AI art genie, and it'll just wish up and conjure up whatever they're looking for. Just like that. Instant convenience. It's the mass production, the quantity of art as opposed to quality. The time that it takes to draw a beautiful image, the time that it takes to paint together a masterful piece has been taken out because this AI can just produce it in a matter of 10 seconds. And again, only in the in such a society where we are dominated with a reign of quantity, that a AI art program that produces whatever you want in a matter of seconds and renders essentially all of the ancient arts in terms of drawing, painting, sculpting obsolete, only in such a time would we have that kind of invention, or even 3D printers and all that kind of stuff. It's Rene Guénon has described the cosmic order that we live in. He has hit the nail on the head with that one. This is the era. It is the reign of quantity, the reign of pure decadence and clutter and mass production over true unity in essence. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's really all I got to say on the matter. I hope this talk was a blessing. And yeah, peace to you. Remember, deceit abounds, so keep your eyes wide open. Peace out. Peace and blessings in the name of the Most High, viewer. My name is Walid Naim, and I am a zealous submitter to the one true God, the creator of all mankind. Do you notice something wrong with the world? Something strange? Despite us having a church, synagogue, and mosque in every neighborhood, how has this entire Western civilization fallen into abject atheism, nihilism, and savagery? Why does life just seem so dull, so meaningless, and so devoid of anything real in the Occidental world? Despite the ubiquitous presence of these religious institutions, why are our so-called Muslim sons in large numbers drinking, smoking, partying, and chasing after women, with no seeming desire to do anything more with their life other than satisfy their base pleasures, when God has commanded them to be clean, righteous, and responsible leaders of their community? And why are our hijabi so-called Muslim daughters walking around with tight jeans that reveal their figure, with TikTok accounts posting semi-provocative, self-absorbed videos of themselves online for the world to see, when God has commanded them to lengthen their garments and be modest in their mannerisms? What has happened here? These young men and women are supposed to be making themselves right before God while raising the next generation of ardent defenders of the holy faith. But it seems that Islam features no more in their lives other than a scarf on their head, a Friday fidgeting around in the mosque when their parents forced them to go against their will, or a decorative hanger in their car. At this rate, if God allows us to continue going down the road it is, then Islam and the Quran will become pretty much non-existent in the lives of most of our descendants, if it wasn't already non-existent now. If we do not take a stand soon, in a few generations, our children's children will likely be indistinguishable from the secular West. Is that the kind of world we want to live in? Our kids to live in? A world practically devoid of the remembrance of the one God and all things sane? I obviously can't speak for you, but for my own self, I can personally say, count me out of it. I'm not going to sit here and just watch my brothers and sisters, those who claim to believe in God alone, believe in Judgment Day, His prophets and angels, and all the other aspects of this holy creed, get duped into going to hell. I'm not going to let this happen without at least something of an effort on my end to reroute this dark trajectory. So, again, how in the world do we end up here? There is a mosque in practically every neighborhood in the West, and no shortage of donations that get dropped in their boxes. They have had lots of funding, lots of time, and unquestioning support from their respective congregations, yet somehow have been run over by the secular atheist. All of their so-called Muslim children go to the atheist, secular public schools for most of their week to be taught beliefs that are completely incompatible with the Quran. And we wonder why they have ended up the way they are. If these houses, and by these houses I mean the mosques, were truly of God, that were doing everything right, then why would our Lord let them get so decisively trampled upon by their enemies? Why do the wicked have all of the reins of power here? Clearly, something is not adding up. Well, it is my thesis here today that the vast, vast majority of mosques that exist in this world today have lost their way and follow a religion which is completely foreign to the Quran. This is why they have failed so miserably in the West, and it seems that God has forgotten them. In truth, the real reason behind their shortcoming is that they, and many of us, have forgotten God Himself, which is why He has left us here collecting our bitter receipts. So, what are my exact criticisms of the mosques today? As a Muslim and a man committed to the truth above all else, what are my personal gripes with their institution, which claims to be for God? The first glaring problem I can think of is that the majority of people who call themselves Muslim have allied themselves with a body of literature that is foreign to the Word of God, treating it equal to, and in fact above, the Quran itself. Of course, I am talking about the Hadith. Listen, the facts are this. There is no justification within the Quran which tells us to follow this hadith stuff, which came hundreds of years after the Prophet Muhammad died, and therefore he could have had no ability to oversee what people have said about him and determine if it is true or false. It is now becoming crystal clear, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, that many things that have been ascribed to him in their most quote-unquote authoritative texts, which they call their Sahih Hadiths, are forgeries that directly contradict God's final revelation. To take these words of men, i.e. the Hadith, and hold them to be equally authoritative to the words of God would be breaking the first and most important commandment, which is to worship God alone, making no equals with him. To say that these supposed words of Muhammad, which are not even Muhammad's own words, but simply very doubtful rumors about what people who existed hundreds of years after him say he said, that have been decided upon by the scholars as authoritative holds equal, or in fact any weight in our faith comparable to the verbatim words of God himself, the Holy Quran, is idolatry. You are exalting man's words to the status of divinity, which should only be given to God's words. Nothing comes even close to the Quran, because God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is its author. This includes the Hadith too, which pales in comparison and is superfluous to the glorious Quran. If you are interested in seeing a full refutation of the Hadith, you may watch my video titled A Defense of Prophet Muhammad, David Wood and Hadith Exposed, which is linked below. In it, along with refuting and putting in his place the worst opponent of Islam on the internet, Mr. David Wood, I also expose how the Hadith is completely contradictory to the Quran and the source of much of the Muslim world's problems. It is a 2-hour-long documentary where I seek to demonstrate the true character of Muhammad in the Quran, defending his history and personality with primary source quotations. I clear the last prophet of God's name from the people who have tarnished his reputation the most, which are certain types of Christians, and, sad to say, Hadith-following Muslims, which have said many terrible things about him. No, Muhammad was not a money-hungry, tyrannical warlord who married a 6-year-old girl. He was a shy, humble, meek man who married adult women, had compassion for even his worst enemies, and oftentimes had a tough time even standing up for himself out of fear of hurting other people's feelings. This is all demonstrated in detail in my video. Once again, the link for that will be in the description under the tab, The True Character of Muhammad in the Quran. So that is the first problem with the mosques, the reason for which I feel they have been forsaken by God, their adoption of an apostate literature which contradicts their foundational scripture. The second point of contention I have with many of the mosques is their seeming unwillingness to say anything controversial which may make them face persecution from their government. The fact that 9/11 was not only an inside job, but the fact that no planes hit the Twin Towers on that day, and the whole charade was a hoax designed by the governments of the world to forever frame the Muslim people as terrorists and justify invasions in our countries, should be taught to every man, woman, and child. This great fraud of the September attacks has left such a lasting, enduring reputation on every brown person, and Muslim in general, that it should be discussed in every mosque. Our people are not responsible for that crime, but it was the governments of the world who carried out that plot and framed us for it. 9/11 is just only one small example, though. There are many other quote-unquote conspiracy theories, which are really just conspiracy facts, avoided by the mosques due to their controversy, like the fact that the monetary system in the West is an ungodly scam based on usury, the fact that the so-called healthcare system is a predatory empire which doesn't try to cure anybody, but instead makes money off of human suffering, the fact that sodomite propaganda is being promoted to the masses, including our children, and the fact that the thing which I will call the C-19er, to avoid censorship, was a hoax perpetrated by the powers that be to greatly expand their police state, censorship incentives, and surveillance systems worldwide in order to create their new world order, and much more. These governments that have occupied our lands are de facto terrorist regimes, and the mosques seem to say nothing of it. They appear to be more concerned with not being labeled extremists while they live their comfortable, well-funded lives, avoiding topics that are hard to deal with due to the abject persecution they bring. That is my second problem with them. Their, at the very least, lack of awareness, or if not, perhaps lack of willingness to address the real geopolitical situation going on in the world. And lastly, my third trouble with the mainstream mosques, which can also be put into the category of conspiracy facts, is their complete ignorance on the true nature of the earth.
It may sound as a shock to you, my viewer, that the Quran, the Bible, and in fact all of the ancient scriptures teach the earth is flat and stationary. This is the only model of the world which is compatible with those texts and also scientifically provable. This flat earth conspiracy, which should really be called the globe earth conspiracy, is one of the biggest lies of the modern world, we are told, and goes in line with what I said earlier about the endemic corruption of the governments of the world. Everything you have been told about where you live is a fabrication, and the space agencies are a shameless hoax. For a fully detailed presentation on the subject of flat earth, where I demonstrate the science, the history, the philosophy, the verses in the Bible and Quran proving it, and much more, you can read my book titled The Flat Earth Manifesto, which is linked in the description. This work runs to nearly 1,200 pages and is practically a textbook on not only the topic of flat earth, but the subject of physics proper, and I expose the biggest fraudulent religion of the West, which is science worship, otherwise known as scientism. As with all of my work, it too is available for free. No, you do not live on a pathetic speck of dust spinning around in the middle of nowhere in space. You live in a brilliant, intelligently designed terrarium created by God and are at the center of the universe. Again, to learn more, the link to the Flat Earth Manifesto will be in the description. Those right there are my 3 biggest scores against the mosques of today. There are more points I could bring up, but these are the major ones. These are the controversies which have estranged me from the rest of the so-called Muslim world. Believe me when I say that I would love to join them, and that it hurts me so deeply that I have to pit myself up against the very institution I was born and raised in, the mosques I attended from childhood, whose carpets upon which I walked, stood, prayed, and listened to the preaching in my earliest years. But that is the price to pay for the truth. My commitment to God and what is right is more important than my emotional attachments to a place that was once dear to my heart. Simply put, this is why I think God has forsaken us. This is why I think that the mosques have been steamrolled by the secular atheist. It is because most of us have abandoned the word of God, neglected preaching the truth, and instead chosen comfort over courageous action. That is my thesis to why this great falling away in the West has taken place. If this sounds shocking to you, if it sounds so unbelievable that the majority of the so-called Muslim world could be deceived so badly, then I simply have these verses in the Quran to show you. In the name of God, the Almighty and the Merciful. Chapter 6, verse 116. And if thou obey most of those upon the earth, they will lead thee astray from the path of God. They follow only assumption, and they are only guessing. Chapter 25, verse 30. And the messenger will say, O my Lord, my people took this Quran as a thing abandoned. God has really predicted this a millennia ago. He knew that the people who follow what is really right are few and far between, that the majority of men and women are led astray, and the people who claim to love Muhammad the most, i.e. mainstream Muslims, would abandon the glorious Quran. God has revealed to us 1,000 years ago that this all would be the case. It is my mission, therefore, by the will of God, to band together with like-minded believers who have understood the truth and work together to build a new institution from the ground up, founded upon prudent fear. We need to start fresh, start anew. We need to build a new mosque where people can hear the unfiltered preaching from the Quran alone, where men and women can get married, where children can play and be educated in the truth, and where the name of the Most High God, without any associate partners, can be remembered. We need a group of highly dedicated men who will raise and defend this institution with their own hands if need be, and go out into the world warning people of the punishment of God, bearing witness to the truth of his oneness. That is my mission, my viewer. If you found that this mission of mine has touched your heart and is something you want to get involved with, then feel free to contact me in the email below. I am located in Ontario, Canada, and I'm looking forward to form a community with like-minded believers who want to contribute to this great cause. I am neither a nationalist nor racially biased. If you follow the Quran alone and believe in the truth, then as far as I'm concerned, you are my brother in the faith. I prefer you over someone of my own kindred who denies God and commits corruption in the earth. My loyalties are primarily ideological, not racial. Remember, my viewer, that this life is short. Everything we do and don't do is recorded by God and will either bear witness for us or against us on the day of judgment. Hell is eternal, and I do not know about you, but as for me, I want to meet my Creator in the best state possible. I want to spend my life struggling to build up my people, the true Muslims, so that God may be pleased with me on that day. If you are interested in that, then feel free to join me. If not, then find something else good to do which will prepare you for your appointment with the Most High. That is where we are all going anyway. With that being said, I say peace and God bless to all of you good people. Take care, everyone.